Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode of the Remote Real Estate Investor. My name is Emil Shore, and today I'm joined by
Michael Albom.
And on this episode, I'm going to be putting Michael in the hot seat and asking him questions about putting his properties in an LLC. We'll quickly cover why he did it, and then I'm just going to ask him how he did it, what he learned, what tips he can offer you, so that if it's something you've been interested in, you have a step-by-step guide on how to do it. So let's hop into this episode. Before we hop into it, what's up, man? It's been a while since we recorded an episode. How you doing?
I know, it's been a minute. I'm doing well, thanks. Trying to get some financing lined up on these 3 multifamily that I got the rug pulled out from under me on, so still working through that. But construction project, the rehab project's almost done, which I've been told is almost done for a while now, so I'm not really holding my breath, but really, I think this time for real is almost done. So that's good with me, man. How about yourself?
I think you, when we started this show like 2 years ago, you told me it was almost done. So I don't know if I trust you anymore.
Yeah, that's true. I believe it.
I hope it finishes soon.
Thank you. Me too.
Good. My update with me, we are still selling the Jacksonville property. We just got it under contract about a week and a half ago, I want to say. We did the buyer scheduled an inspection on Thursday, so I should probably be hearing back from my agent like today or tomorrow on, I'm sure, what they want to knock the price down based on seeing the inside, which I knew going into it, like, once the inspection is done on the inside, we've had a tenant there for 5 years. They're definitely going to want some, they're going to ask for something. So I'm expecting it. We'll see how that goes.
Okay, cool. Well, keep me posted. Let me know how it all shakes out.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. So this episode, a lot of people, I think in a previous episode, we covered what should you do in LLC? Should you put your properties, just get umbrella coverage? In this episode, we're going to really just focus on like the steps that you personally took on setting up an LLC, getting your properties in, things you learned, mistakes you made, all that stuff. But before we hop into like the how, can you briefly give us the why? Like, why did you decide to set up an LLC and put your properties in it?
Yeah, totally. So I grew up in the insurance world. Next question. No, so like it was something that I grew up around, like segregating assets and like understanding what risk is and how to mitigate risk. And so that's really, from my perspective, what an LLC is used for. You put things into an LLC that's bucketed. And so that's kind of the limit of your exposure. And so I used to work as a fire protection engineer in the commercial property insurance industry. And that's also kind of on the physical side of things. What we would do, we would say, okay, how bad can a fire get? And can we physically build a building and put systems in place that will contain that fire so it doesn't spread to the rest of the stuff? Because if you have a small fire, it's usually not a big deal. If it's contained, it's not necessarily the end of the world. Versus if you burn the whole plant down, that can be very problematic. So same kind of thinking can be applied to asset protection from the real estate investing side of things. So it just made sense to me to bucket things in their own bucket and keep them totally separate from my own assets. So therefore, if I did have a fire, quote unquote, metaphorically speaking, or a physical one, as any listeners of the pod know that I've had too, it doesn't affect the rest of my building, so to speak, the rest of my net worth or my nest egg. So just keeping things separate made sense to me. And so there's financial burdens that go along with that. In order to have, own, and maintain an LLC, there's a cost associated with that. That overhead was worth it to me to mitigate that risk exposure.
Yep, makes sense. So did you set up an LLC before you bought your first property? Did you buy a property and then like quick claim it in? What was your timeline for LLC?
Yeah, so my very first 2 properties were Southern California single family homes. And so they didn't cash flow very much. If you live in California, the LLC has to be registered in California from everything I've been told and heard. If someone has a way around that, I've been asking for years, let me know. I would love to not have to give California state government $800 a year per LLC. So those first 2 investments I just had in my personal name. I had high liability limits on the insurance policies themselves, like on the dwelling itself. And then I also got an umbrella that sat on top of that because that just made me comfortable. And an umbrella, for anyone who doesn't know what it is It's basically a liability only policy that will sit on top of your existing policies and give you a limit across the entire portfolio. And so the dwelling policy itself has a liability limit attached to it. And so for me, I think I had like $2 million of coverage, or maybe 1 million on the dwelling. And then I had an additional, I think 1 or 2 million as an umbrella. And so that can be applied across multiple properties. But that dollar limit is like all that the insurance company would pay out in any given occurrence. And they also have an annual limit that they'll pay out in any given year.
Right. That's my current setup. I never LLC'd. I wanted to at some point, but
ooh, good verb.
What? LLC'd?
Yeah, you heard it here first,
LLC.
Folks. New real estate investing verb.
Yeah, don't trust the words I make up. So I wanted to, but decided to just I had an umbrella policy from the beginning on top of regular rental property insurance. So that's still my setup.
I think it makes sense for a lot of people, and so you have to like understand what is entailed. What are the risks and benefits of having an LLC versus not having an LLC, and just weigh the pros and cons. I definitely don't think it's you like thou shalt have an LLC. Like, no, you don't. I don't think you need one necessarily. You just have to make sure that you understand, again, what are the pros and cons for your situation. And so it wasn't until I bought my third property, and that was out of state, that the cash flow cumulatively between all three was enough to support the $800 a year payment. So that's when I did the whole LLC thing.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. I'd probably say, this is just my opinion, not legal advice or anything. I'd probably say when I did it, my net worth wasn't very big. I didn't feel like I had a lot to lose. I feel like when you start having more to lose, right? You're like, someone could personally come after more, probably a very, very good idea to make sure you have an LLC. So at the bare minimum, that's, my opinion.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, talk to a legal expert and get an understanding, because they can really give you the breakdown. Hey, this is what's exposed, or this is what's protected with an LLC. Because the one thing I really hate to see is someone open an LLC, especially themselves, think that they're totally protected and then get totally shafted, in a lawsuit or that sort of thing. So you really want to understand, because you're setting up this system to protect yourself and your family and the assets, like spend the extra couple $100, whatever it is, to do it right, and make sure that truly you have an understanding and a grasp of what is this doing and what are its limitations.
For sure. So that's a good segue. So at what point did you decide to LLC? You bought the 2 SoCal properties.
Yeah, so
didn't have an LLC.
So it was after the third property that I purchased out of state. The cash flow was then enough on that, and then the other 2 cumulatively to support that $800 a year LLC payment to California.
Right.
So at that point I said, okay, let's move everything, put it into the LLC, and now that'll kind of be its own standalone thing. And so that just made sense at the time. And so I kept a very similar insurance policy structure, where I had the same liability limits on the property itself. And then I also had the umbrella for the LLC that sat over those 3 properties.
Got it. Okay.
Because I'm neurotic.
So I think you're just being smart. So walk us through that. Because now that you have properties, you have to do what's called a quit claim of the deed, right? From your name into the LLC. So we'll get to that. But what did you do? Did you hire a lawyer? Did you just go on like Rocket Lawyer or one of those online? How did you do it?
Yep. So I did it myself. I went on I think it was like LegalZoom or one of those type situations where you can set up your own LLC. In hindsight, I probably wish I had used an attorney, just because it was totally brand new and I was worried about making the wrong choice or selecting the right things. So in hindsight, I wish I would have spent the extra money just to have it done right. But for the quit claiming process, I used an attorney. Okay. And we've had her on the podcast before, Kelly Chrisman. She's amazing. She's awesome, really well-versed in all this sort of stuff. So for the 2 properties I owned, I quit claimed those into the LLC. And for this third property, I knew I wanted to basically start an LLC to take property ownership. And so I actually did that concurrently while I was in escrow, and got the LLC opened before the property closed, so that I actually took title directly from the seller into the name of the LLC. Because the more you can keep your name off the chain of title, apparently that's more beneficial. So I was like, okay, I'll just do that, because I wanted to do it anyhow. So instead of closing in my personal name and quit claiming, I just went straight to the LLC. And it was a private lending note, so that was no problem to close from the lending perspective in the name of the LLC.
Got it. Okay. So that's that was going to be my next question is like, what are the differences in like the process when you buy in your personal name? I think you highlighted on the first one, you can get a loan based on you as the individual. When you get in an LLC, it's a little bit different, right?
Right. So my understanding, and definitely chat with your lending partners and professionals out there, but my understanding is that like the government subsidized conventional loans, the Fannie Freddie type products cannot be titled in the name of the LLC. They're not going to lend to the LLC. They're going to lend to Emil Shore or Michael Albom or Pierre Carrillo as individuals, not as entities. In commercial mortgages, totally different space, different ball game. We actually just recorded a podcast with a commercial lender and a conventional lender, their husband and wife team. And so it was really interesting to kind of get both sides of that coin. But if you're going to get a non-conventional mortgage, you can likely get one in the name of your LLC or some sort of business entity. And so I would just simply ask your lender, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. This is the goal I'm trying to accomplish. What's the best way to do this? And if they say, well, you need to close in the name of your personal name, and you eventually want to get it to the LLC, ask them, well, hey, can I transfer to the LLC after the fact? Some lenders will say, no, you may not. Others might tell you, yeah, the loan's closed, do whatever you want, we don't care. So that might affect your lending decision of who you ultimately get financing through. Because if someone tells you, no, don't do that, do you really want to go get that loan from that lender? Might kind of make you take pause and think twice about it. So again, be super forthcoming with all the information, give them the goals, the strategies, the hopes, the wants, the dreams, so that they can really help structure what loan product makes sense for you. Because if we just give them the transaction piece of it and we're going to do something different down the road, they're not giving you the best advice because they don't have the whole picture.
Got it. Okay. And so if I have a brand new LLC and I decide to get a loan in the name of the LLC, if it's a brand new LLC, like how do lenders usually look at that brand new LLC? Like how do they deem it worthy of lending?
Yeah. So they'll, in that instance, likely look to you as the borrower. And just be like, do you have enough money to do this? And we're going to make you sign a personal guarantee. So you're still, even if Emil Shore LLC 123 can't pay the debt like Emil Shore can, we're coming after you directly. And so new businesses, new LLCs are started all the time to take over property ownership or to receive property ownership essentially. And so I think that's something that they're used to. If they balk and say, oh, you need 2 years of like business tax returns, like obviously new businesses won't have that. And so ask them, hey, how do we work around this? Can I give you a personal guarantee? What do you need from me to make this happen?
Got it. Okay. Good to know. Let's see, what else do I want to ask you? What other parts of the transaction are different? So financing can be something you need to ask your lender, could be different. What else was different about buying a property through an LLC versus in your personal name?
One of the main differences from a process standpoint, really nothing. The two are equivalent. You still go get an inspection. You still negotiate with the seller. One thing I would definitely recommend people do is if they are considering purchasing in an LLC that might not be in existence yet, as you put your name on the purchase and sale agreement, put your name or assignee. And that basically allows you to assign the contract to someone else. And so it's something that wholesalers might do. And if someone asks about it, just say like, no, I'm just not sure. It's either going to be me or my LLC. I'm just not sure yet, or I haven't created it yet. And that way you can assuage any fears that, oh, someone's trying to wholesale this deal on me. But that makes it super easy for once you open your LLC, you can now say, okay, it's not Michael Albom, it's Michael Albom LLC 123, whatever that entity is. And then the other thing to keep in mind is like the money flow for how you physically need to purchase the property. So if you do purchase and close in the LLC, the money needs to come to escrow, to the title company from the LLC. And so in your example, Emil, like you were asking, what if it's a brand new LLC? So if you're buying a $100,000 property and the bank's giving you a loan for 80, you're bringing 20, you, Emil, would transfer that 20 grand into the LLC bank account, which then that's where you're going to wire the money from to close the deal over to the escrow company, as opposed to wiring it from Emil Shore's checking account over to the escrow company. So you want to be able to show very clearly that this is the LLC's asset. This isn't Emil Shore's asset.
Got it. I'm glad you gave us that note about, either your name or assignee, because you're right, a lot of wholesalers use that. And it's funny you bring that up because on the Jacksonville property, we got a couple offers and they had that language, and we didn't choose some because we're like, wholesaler, like those deals can fall out. They have to go find a buyer, and, not as strong as someone who's just coming to buy it. So like if you mention, if you have your agent mention to the selling agent or whatever that I'm putting that in because it's going to be my LLC, it's going to get looked at differently. So, so good thing to clarify when you write that offer.
Yep.
Okay. I think that was most of the questions I had for you. Any big lessons you had from the process? I think you mentioned a couple, but if you could do it all over again, what you would do differently?
Yeah, I think I would just have an attorney do it from the start, draft up the LLC documents. It's also super important to keep in mind of if you don't live in the same state as where the property is owned in the LLC, like what does the registration process look like? And so I've done it both ways. I formed a California entity and then registered as a foreign entity in the state where the property is owned. So for me, that was like Kentucky or Alaska or Ohio. I've also done it the opposite, where I formed the LLC in Ohio and then register it as a foreign entity here in California. And so again, not legal advice, definitely chat with a legal professional. But from my experience, the LLC needs to be registered in both locations, in California because that's where I live, and in the state in which the property is owned as well. And there are certain things, taxes, forms, filings that I have to maintain for both states, which are separate and distinct. And so making sure that you're in compliance with the local state governing rules and regulations around LLCs. You also need to have a registered agent if you're not living in the same state in which the LLC is owning the property. You might even need a registered agent if you do live in that same state. But basically what a registered agent is someone or some company that can receive court papers on your behalf, really is what it typically is. And so if you're getting served, like, is there, like, where do we send the mail to? And so that's what a registered agent is. So there's businesses and services out there that can do that for you. I just use like a service provider that handles all that. I've also used like my CPA or my property manager. Right. That can also work, but you just want to check and understand the local rules and regulations around who can and can't be a registered agent for you.
Yeah. Yeah. LegalZoom, all those internet, LLC providers, they usually have that as like an add-on option as well. So if you're like, how do I do that? They make it super easy, like very, very common thing. They make it super easy for you. Yep. If you don't want to talk to a lawyer, your accountant, a good accountant can be very helpful here as well. And they don't bill you for a 30-minute consult. Yeah. So accountant could be helpful here as you're trying to figure this stuff out as well. Absolutely. Absolutely. Cool, man. I don't have anything else. I think that's probably a good spot. This was actually enlightening for me because I haven't gone. I have an LLC for my business, but not for a rental property. So this was good for me as well. Yeah, right on, man. Glad it was helpful. Cool. All right, man. Let's wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please, please, please leave us a comment. Let us know what you liked, what you want to hear in future episodes, wherever you're listening to this, and we will catch you on the next episode. Happy investing. Happy investing.